And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Monday morning, starting off with a lot of IFR from the Brooks Range out to the Arctic coast. Another band here right along the eastern Bering Sea, St. Lawrence Island down to Makoriak and the Alaska Peninsula, and marginal VFR back out to the west. The interior, fair amount of VFR, as you can see, with the IFR at the front, hung up along the North Gulf Coast here from Yakutat back into Prince William Sound, extending down across Kodiak Island and right along the outer coastline of the Panhandle. And then for the afternoon, we've got diminishing IFR but lingering up along the North Gulf Coast and mostly marginal for the southeast coast. Good VFR in the interior and less IFR now up over the north slope with marginal VFR for the Arctic coast. And this area of IFR holding St. Lawrence Island southward to the Alaska Peninsula, possibly even the north side of Unalaska Island. And then some marginal VFR with areas of VFR for the Bering Sea and the Aleutians. And for the morning hours, we still have IFR here over the eastern Bering Sea. Next front pushing IFR into the western Bering to about Amchitka Island. And some IFR there for the northern Seward Peninsula, right up, just grazing Point Hope and Cape Lisburne. And marginal VFR with some IFR for the north slope, and then areas of marginal VFR across interior Alaska. Now just marginal conditions for the North Gulf Coast, Kodiak Island, in across the Panhandle. And then for the afternoon, further improvement here, VFR right on up into Prince William Sound. And good VFR in the interior, south of the Brooks Range. North of the mountains up there, still a patch of IFR, and then mostly marginal for the Arctic coast. IFR here for the southeastern Bering Sea to the Alaska Peninsula, but becoming VFR, St. Lawrence Island. And the Pribilofs, possibly VFR here, right in that area. And then IFR advancing eastward here, all the way across Atka Island, pushing in toward Nikolsky late in the afternoon. Moving on to the passes. For Anatuvik, looks like another IFR day at times coming up there for Monday. A little bit better possibly for Adigan. Marginal VFR in the forecast there. Like Clark and Merrill, IFR, rainy, marginal VFR, and the lowest conditions will be on the eastern approaches of all three passes there. Looks good for windy VFR. Eastern Alaska range looking good as well for Isabel and Mentasta. Tanita back to marginal, Portage, IFR, and Chilcoot and White, IFR. Freezing levels here, 2,000 to 4,000 feet over the interior now, and then about 4,000 to 6,000 feet there across the southeast coast, and 2,000 to 4,000 feet pushing into the far western Aleutians. And from there, taking a look at icing, we've got areas of considerable moderate rime icing here, actually from Yukon Flats area, just south of the Yukon River here, extending down across Kuskokwim Bay and then back in across the Alaska Peninsula. Icing free for the eastern Aleutians to Atka, and then picking up some more icing threats there for the western Aleutians. And another band of possibly considerable moderate rime icing for the North Gulf Coast and the southern southeast coast. Jet stream, huge low here south of Kodiak Island. Cyclonic flow around that, east-southeast 65 knots here in the interior, turning northeast at about the same speed along the southwest coast. Even stronger winds here coming up into the Panhandle, anywhere from 80 to 95 knots. And out to the west, good strong northerly jet, 90 to 110 knots there, blowing right across the central Aleutians. And for 9,000 feet, northeast to north flow here, 45 to 50 knots from the Alaska Peninsula to Adak and Atka. And in the interior, winds 35 to 45 knots. North slope, 40 knot winds out of the east. And the strongest here, 55 knots, right over the Panhandle. 3,000 feet, southeast coast looking at 35 to 50 knot winds there. And then south winds up to 40 knots right into the North Gulf Coast. And then they don't make it too much farther inland, as you can see, pretty light for the Copper River Basin. And a band of east-northeasterlies, 35 to 40 knots there from Porcupine River, right on down the Yukon there to the coast. North 50 knots for the eastern Bering Sea here across the Alaska Peninsula and the eastern Aleutians. And then easterlies 40 to 50 knots, pretty strong there for the Arctic coast areas. And for turbulence, Look for moderate turbulence here for the Alaska Peninsula, as well as the Fox Islands, and then up here over the northeast part of the state, south of the Brooks Range there, right along the Yukon River, and also for the eastern Arctic coast with those 50-knot winds we saw at 3,000 feet, and southern Panhandle as well. Could be pretty bumpy there.